Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Kisisa. And it is impossible to think about the Sedra, the coming Sedra of the week, without connecting it to the previous Sedra of Tetzaveh, to the festival of Purim that comes on, please God, Wednesday, just Tuesday night, Wednesday, and with the events that are happening, that we are experiencing in the land of Israel, in the all over the world as Jewish people. Everybody has to feel connected and in some way able to contribute to, please God, the Hashem answering our prayers and saving us from the physical threats of annihilation that we are facing. And but really this is something that together as a people we need to work to achieve this result. And as we look at the festival of Purim, the themes of unity, the themes of the fact that when Esther Hamalka, Queen Esther, is told by Mordecai that she has to risk her life in order to go to save her, to prevail upon the king Ahasuerus, to save her people. And she is told that, perhaps she has been created, as we've spoken about last week, for this very purpose. And she then takes that authority, and she takes uh, takes the responsibility to do just that. And she says, Lech kanos es kol haYehudim, go and gather all of the Jews in the Megillah. And this call for unity, this call for, whether it's the prayers, whether it's the fasting together, which we do on Tanis Esther, the day before Purim. This year, Sunday night, well, effectively Monday, the fast begins in the early hours of Monday morning. And so all of this is crucial as we realize where we are now in our national lives, in the picture of the whole world. This is clearly a global issue, a global threat, and we are, as we are in a position of acute danger. We need to call to Hashem. We need to call to Hashem at all times, but especially at these times. I think it's just much more apparent to us, and we have the ability to do something, and that is possibly one of the most empowering things that we as individuals, to know that we can contribute in a meaningful way. I'm not going to go up and fly the jets, as I early this morning came down and I could hear aeroplanes, and I was so grateful to Hashem that I could know that these were our planes, that these were not enemy planes, which is one kind of miracle. And then thinking about the heroes who are flying these planes and how much they need the miracles of Hashem and our efforts to keep them safe, to enable them to be successful. So now more than ever, we're dedicating this learning to all of the soldiers in the IDF to help them with all of the threats that they're facing. And please God, they should be successful. Please God, all the wounded should be healed, and the refuah sheleima of Rivka Yittel bas Rachel. So, if we're looking, just jumping ahead at the moment, the Sedra of Kisisa, although it contains other events and other subjects, it is possibly most famous for the sin of the golden calf, the Egel Hazahav. And there is a connection when we're looking at Tetzaveh, and that's last week's Sedra, and Purim sandwiched in the middle, and Kisisa. I think with this configuration, as it works out this year, it's easier to actually see the connections between Purim and Yom Kippur. And when I say it like that, it might not be quite so striking and obvious. But if we know that Yom Kippur is also referred to as Yom HaKippurim, and when you look at the exact translation, Yom HaKippurim, the day that is like Purim. And we can't actually think, I don't believe, of two more different Yomim Tovim as types of festivals than Yom Kippur, which is very ethereal, abstaining from physical activities, spending time in shul, davening, fasting, and then, almost contradictory to the other extreme, we have Purim, which is a day of celebration, of joy, of fun. And fun is just not the word that you would use for Yom Kippur. But actually, we'll see that there are very, very, very um, similar attitudes or similar events that happen when you look a little bit deeper on these two very special days. So just to start, if we're looking at the psukim in our Sedra of Kisisa, which talk about how the luchos, the tablets, were broken, and that is chapter 32, verses 15 to 19, and we'll say, Vayifen vayered Moshe min hahar, and Moshe turned and descended from the mountain, Ushnei luchos ha'edos, and two tablets of testimony, beyodo, in his hands, luchos kesuvim mishnei everehem, the luchos that were written on both of their sides, mizeh or mizeh, on sort of front and back. And the miraculous aspect of that was that this was michtav, of the writing of Hashem, and they were chiseled. And when you chisel out letters, there are certain letters that you can't chisel out without the middle falling through. If a letter is a complete circle, like a samach, or like a mem, sort of like a final mem, then when you chisel it out, the center section is going to fall out completely unless you attach it with little pieces in four corners to stop that happening. But in one of the miracles associated with the first tablets, which is what we're referring to in this portion, then none of that happened. All of the letters stayed intact. And also, if you chisel something as a human engraver or a sculptor, whatever the name of the profession is, then when you chisel it on one side, if you look at it from the back, it's going to be mirror writing. And this is, again, something that didn't happen. It was with the first tablets, the writing read perfectly whichever side you looked on, which is not something that is humanly possible. So this is sort of part of the description of the psukim. Heim Ksubim Vahaluchos Masa Elohim, and the tablets were the handiwork of Hashem. Hema, they were Vahamichtav Michtav Elohim, and the writing was the writing of Hashem, Chorus al Haluchos, engraved, etched into the tablets. And so again, a beautiful Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Perek 6, that says that Chorus al Haluchos, engraved on the luchos, Al tikra choros elo cheros. Don't read engraved, read freedom. Now, the words choros and cheros contains exactly the same letters in the same sequence. And when you say choros, that means chiseled, engraved. When you say cheros, that means freedom. And very beautifully, our rabbis interpret that don't read engraved, read freedom, because you don't have a free person, somebody who is freer than somebody who is a servant of Hashem. And really, this is giving us the ultimate truth that it doesn't matter that we have 613 mitzvahs, 248 things, mitzvahs aseh, that we are mitzvahs that we are required to do, 365 mitzvahs lo sase, 365 prohibitions. We are never freer than we are observing all of that. And somebody, an anarchist or an atheist might look at you and say, but that's ridiculous. You don't have freedom. But this is the point, that the uniqueness of the Torah, the way Hashem is caring for us with all of the requirements, the mitzvahs saseh, with all of the prohibitions, the things that we are supposed to refrain from. This is how we gain ultimate freedom. So again, all of this part of the the first luchos. Vayishma Yeshua es kol ha'am, and Yeshua heard the voice of the people, baroah, in its shouting. And I don't think it's accidental that we see the word ra embedded in that word shouting, because this was clearly a shouting of licentiousness. Vayomer el Moshe kol milchama b'machana, and he said to Moshe, there's a voice of war in the camp. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, Vayomer, ein kol anos gevura. This is not the sound of victory, of strength. But ein kol anos chalusha. And this is not a sound of weakness. Kol anos anochi shemea. I hear a sound of blasphemy. And this is actually what Rashi says, that what was going on there, because effectively at the sin of the golden calf, the Jewish people broke all of the Aseret HaDibros that they had heard 40 days before. And this was the blasphemy and the treachery. And we might think that there's no saving grace. There's no possible way that we can that we can pick ourselves up after that. But actually, this is not the case at all. And we learn this ironically from the last posuk of the Torah, which is V'zos habracha in Devarim. And this is the farewell, really, of Moshe Rabbeinu. The whole of the Sefer Devarim is, and we see that that Moshe Rabbeinu passes away, and the people wept for him, and the succession passes to to Yehoshua ben Nun. And if we look at chapter Lamed Daled, chapter 34, pasuk Yud Beis, Ulechol hayad hachazacha, and to all of the strength in his hand, Ulechol hamora, and all of the miracles and the awesomeness, Mora Hagadol, the great awesomeness, Asher asa Moshe le'enei kol Yisrael, that Moshe did in front of all of the eyes of the children of, in front of the eyes of all of the children of Israel. And what does Rashi say? Le'enei kol Yisrael, she'nosei libo lishbar haluchos, that his heart was inspired to break the luchos le'eneihem, in front of their eyes, she'nema Ve'eshbarim le'inechem, as it says, and I broke them in front of their eyes. The vehiskima das hakodesh baruch hu ledato, and the approval, the agreement of Hashem was joined to his own opinion, to Moshe's own opinion to do that. Shenema, as it says, Asher shibarta, when Hashem says to Moshe, the stones, the tablets that you broke, Yasher kochacha sheshibarta. You can congratulate him. You did the right thing. Kol hakavod, that you broke them. So why was this such a good thing that Moshe Rabbeinu broke the tablets in the Sedra that we read? And the answer is given that we can see that through these broken fragments of the luchos, which had to be stored in the Aron, together with the second set, which were not made by Hashem, they were made by Moshe Rabbeinu, and they didn't have the miraculous aspects that I pointed out earlier. And I think that we can actually realize that through that whole experience, through the the sins that were committed at that time, and Moshe Rabbeinu's response to those sins, because Moshe Rabbeinu could have just handed those luchos back to Hashem when he realizes that something terrible is going on down below, and he could have avoided this very public breaking of the stones. But the public breaking of the stones in front of the eyes of all of the children of Israel is meant to show all of us that when we make mistakes, we need to know that, as the rabbi of Kotsk says, there is nothing so whole as a broken heart. When we do something wrong, then it's as if those fragments actually let in the light of Hashem. And perhaps we can understand, which is something that feels at times very hard to comprehend, that when 40 days previously we're at Har Sinai, we are at the highest level. So how so soon after could we come crashing down so very low? And perhaps at the very greatness, at that greatest point, that is also the danger and the reality of an ego that is just too big. And it is that ego that doesn't let the light of Hashem shine through. And when we are broken, when we realize that we've done something terribly wrong, that is the point that we let the light of Hashem shine through, and we are able to achieve a complete teshuvah. And so in this way, we can see how the festivals of tissa, which talk about and principally about the clothes of the Kohanim and the Kohen Gadol, which he is going to wear during the Yom Kippur service. And then this week's Sedra, which again, this week's coming Sedra of Kisisa, which gives us the possibility of the teshuvah, of effecting the teshuvah. And then in the middle, we have Purim, which is connected in this way because it is telling us that the people faced the terrible, the threat of destruction, and they experienced that feeling of brokenness. And that is something, as we see so many parallels with what's going on today, and we see in, Parsha Zohar, last Shabbos, we see that the miracle of the Haman of today was destroyed, like the Haman of the Megillah. And then we see that we are reading and remembering Purim, and we're going towards Yom Kippurim, when we're reading about the events that happened in this week's Sedra, coming of Kisisa. So all of these threads can be woven together in that beautiful tapestry, in the garments of the Kohen Gadol that were woven together like in a beautiful tapestry. In the events of our lives today, that we see the hand of Hashem working in ways that are obvious, in ways that are hidden, and please God, we should see the Yeshua's Hashem, the salvation of Hashem, in the blink of an eye. The blink of an eye that we recognize all of this. We embed it in our hearts, in our minds, and in our lives. And in this way, we are able to celebrate the full Geula, Kimu v'Kiblu, as it says in the Megillah, that all of the people accept upon themselves and they uphold all of the messages that we read about from millennia ago and that we're experiencing today. Thank you very much for listening. Wishing everybody that Shabbat Shalom and peace, that we should have safety and security and peace in our land and beyond.